Welcome to Kent County Levy Court combined meeting, 555 Bay Road, Dover, Delaware. This is Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. We're in the Levy Court chambers. And before we get started, we'll have the county administrator read the rules for the folks attending by phone or WebEx.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening we are meeting both in person here at 555 Bay Road, and we're inviting guests to join us via WebEx. And for those folks who may be joining us over the internet or by phone, we just want to let you know that this proceeding is being recorded. This is a business meeting of Levy Court, and as such, we would ask that at the appropriate times during the agenda, if there's opportunity for public comment, that we will provide instruction at that time for you to unmute your device and then provide comments. And we'd ask that anyone doing so precede their comments with their name for the record, so that we have that as part of our recording for preparation of minutes later on. And also, this as an official proceeding of Levy Court, we are following the Mason's Rules of Order, along with the Levy Court Rules of Procedure that govern business meetings and committee meetings. And at this time, Mr. President, I'll turn the floor back to you to begin the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll call the meeting to order. But prior to moving any further, I'll just notify everyone that under business meeting, item number 1, under Mr. Angel, will be withdrawing from the agenda this evening. But other than that, the rest of the agenda will proceed as printed. Invocation, Mr. Howell, Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Buxton. Moment of silence for our troops and first responders, Commissioner Sweeney. All rise.
Heavenly Father, we acknowledge your presence tonight, and we pray that all of our deliberations and decisions will be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Please remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our military members, law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics, and other first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty, protecting and fighting for our freedoms. In addition to those listed here, we also honor first responders, nurses, and doctors who have succumbed to COVID-19 virus complications contracted through close interaction with infected patients, losing their lives caring for others. As of today, more than 567,000 Americans nationwide, 1,603 here in Delaware and 328 in Kent County have lost their lives to COVID. Please remember all these individuals and their families in your thoughts and prayers as they deal with the loss of their loved ones. In law enforcement, Deputy Sheriff Patrick Barnes, Jefferson Davis County Sheriff's Department, Mississippi. Police Officer David Pard from the Lexington Police Department in North Carolina. Celind Rosenberg from the Division of Forestry in Ohio, and firefighter EMT Efren Medina from the St. Mary's Fire Department in Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweeney. Mr. Tanaka, can we have a roll call, please, to determine quorum?
Mr. Angel.
present.
Mr. Buxton.
Present.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Howell.
Here.
Mrs. Maston.
Present.
Mr. Sweeney.
Here.
Mr. Pepper.
Here.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 present.
Thank you. Everyone's here. We do have a quorum. Need a motion for the adoption of the revised agenda.
So moved, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Angel, second by Commissioner Maston to approve this evening's agenda. Can we have a roll call on that, please?
Mr. Angel.
Yes.
Mr. Buxton.
Yes.
Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mrs. Maston.
Yes.
Sorry. Mr. Howell.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. This evening's agenda has been adopted. Need a motion for the approval of Levy Court business meeting minutes of Tuesday, April 6th and Tuesday, April 13th, 2021.
Move to approve both, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Howe. We have roll call, please, on that.
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. April 6th and April 13th agenda or meeting minutes have been approved. At this time, we'll adjourn to our committee meetings. First committee meeting on the agenda is Administration Committee. Mr. Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Pettermaj, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, we have with us some representatives from the Harrington Senior Center. Karen Kraus is with us, along with some other folks, and if she would like to proceed down to the podium to discuss with you, along with any of the other folks who've joined her, to address Levy Court. And just as a word before they begin, several weeks back, received a letter, actually in mid-March, from Ms. Kraus, and it outlined in significant detail plans for a narrative about the current conditions of the senior center and the plans for the future. And along with that, there were several attachments, and all those attachments were forwarded to the commissioners in their packet this week so that they could be prepared for tonight's discussion. And when I mentioned it to leadership a few weeks back, they suggested that we invite you to come tonight and give us the verbal version of this, and so we can discuss a little further and get a better understanding of the current situation and what you plan for the future for your folks in the Harrington area. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do have paper copies. If anybody would like that, let me know. I do have those printed out. I also have a larger printout of what we're hoping to do in the future. So basically, we're here because the senior center was built in the 1800s, as I stated in our letter, the original part. And we have some major structural issues going on. So basically, we have closed the front part of our building to members for safety concerns. And so we're operating with just about half of our building, 2 large rooms in the back, which is the newer part of the center. And then our kitchen, which is part of the old building and part of the new building. So we need to reconstruct the senior center, and especially with COVID, as we've learned that social distancing is very hard to do in our kitchen because our kitchen is small. We also can't do commercial cooking in our kitchen where we could have fundraisers. Meals on Wheels are brought from the Modern Maturity Center to the center every day and packaged and go out of our center to the homebound folks, plus they serve our congregate meals. So in listening to several people and especially talking with a representative from Chris Coon's legislative aid regarding funding, we've been talking to a lot of people. It was suggested that with all the COVID monies for infrastructure that could be coming to both the county and the state, that we seek help from a little bit of everybody and not put the burden of this project just on one group. So we have sent a packet to the community project funding through Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester's office. We have, of course, come to the county, and then we've also sent in to the state for the bond bill committee. So basically, with our project, with the building in the condition that it is in, we don't feel that we can separate this over a 5 or 6 year period of time. That wouldn't be conducive to our members due to the status of our building. And so we are hoping between the 3 groups that we could get the funding to do this as a lump sum project. which right now is hard to project the cost because costs keep going up every day as far as the lumber and building. It's also hard to get contractors to come and meet with us since we haven't gone to an RFP process yet because we're seeking funding. We have had an architect come and do drawings for us. We funded that, but that was prior to us knowing that our upstairs had to be closed and part of our downstairs that are in that old portion of the building. So from that, we then moved forward with those drawings, and with the help of Donna. Donna has helped speak with a lot of these contractors. You know, we're looking at a project that could cost approximately $1.3 million. We know it could also cost more. We know there's things that we haven't put in here. So we are doing a capital campaign also, going out and asking for donations. And we've done very well with that. And since we haven't formally put that out, we've already raised $5,000 in about 2 months, which that may seem minimal, but when you're talking about the town of Harrington and you're talking about seniors, that really is a good contribution, I think, on the part of our members. So that is our ask. If you have questions, I'll certainly answer what I can. I'll have Donna answer some if they get technical into the building part or what she talked to with the contractors. Just to give you some history of the upstairs, basically the ceiling fell in last June. When we pulled that ceiling down completely, we found rafters were twisted and rotted in some places, which was also then causing the issues at the bottom of the building, in the front room where the floor is sinking, that we have some twisted joists. I mean, it's not an immediate, oh, it's gonna fall down, but we know we need to be proactive. And that's why we shut it down, is so no members could get hurt, no staff could get hurt, and moved everything to the back of the building. So questions?
Questions, commissioners? Ms. Maston?
Yes. How many members do you have, and how many meals are you providing a day, even though I know they're provided by modern maturity?
So we have 600, right around 600 members, which may not seem like a lot, but again, when you're talking about the city of Harrington, for meals, we do approximately 140 meals a day that go out to Meals on Wheels, which we have volunteers right from the center that help deliver, help pack. Right now we have from Modern Maturity side, there's only 3 paid staff members in the kitchen, and the rest are volunteers right from the Harrington community. And then on an average lunch day, pre-COVID, I'm going to put that qualifier in there because COVID certainly has reduced our participation. You know, we could serve anywhere from 10 to 50 in-person meals because we really try to build activities around the lunchtime so that we do know that our seniors come in and get a healthy meal every day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Howell?
Yes, quick question. We were already familiar with this because of the email you sent, so on and so forth. So we're not exactly starting from ground zero, but do you think there'll be an increase in employment if you get this venture completed? Do you anticipate any new openings for jobs?
I would say that's a big possibility. If we can increase our capacity and have more activities, we certainly would then seek to, hire additional people. Modern Maturity Center hires the kitchen staff. That's not hired by Harrington Senior Center.
Good. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Sweeney?
Hi, Karen. What's the timeline on this?
As soon as possible.
The building itself is in such bad condition, it really is very time-sensitive.
So other than the inability to prepare meals in a commercial kitchen, are there other services that are being impacted by this?
Yes, because we've closed one of our bigger rooms in the front. We're now having to put all activities where we had 3 rooms into 2 rooms. And one of those rooms that we closed was a large room. So it is impacting, especially with COVID and how I have to, social distance folks. So it will take a lot of planning on our part to schedule activities. And so that could reduce the number of people that come into the center for activities. That's why I think it's important that We rebuild so that we can expand in the future because the city of Harrington, the town of Harrington, the rural area of Harrington, with all the housing projects, there are a lot of seniors moving into the area. And so I'm looking to prepare for the future.
Where's the next closest senior center to you guys?
Frederica or Milford. I mean, they're probably equal, so Frederica, Milford.
Okay.
Anybody else? Ms. Maston?
Pre-COVID, were you using your facility for a revenue generator, like for anniversary, graduation type parties? And if not, do you plan to do that when you get your new center?
Yes, when we get the kitchen, one of our reasons we did offer it to, I know Weight Watchers came in and used our facility. We did have a few rentals, but because of our kitchen and the inability to secure the things for Modern Maturity Center to make sure their stuff wasn't damaged by someone that was renting, and we didn't have the refrigeration space and we don't have a stove. We have a household stove, not a commercial stove. So that is part of our looking into the future, that if we have a commercial kitchen, we would be able to certainly do fundraisers on our own that we can't do now, but then also make it available to the public. Currently, we let the 4-H use it. We've let, I know AA has asked to use it, but again, with COVID and cleaning, we haven't gone in that direction yet.
Anybody else? Mr. Buxton, Commissioner?
Trying to go last instead of first. It's not easy. Just my nature. But I didn't want the meeting to end. A couple of things. Mike, Mr. Pettit-Dimash, you know, the federal government did a nice job of announcing to the world that $35 million is coming our way. Since that time, we've been stuck, at least I have, in a holding pattern on exactly what type of spending fits the money. In all likelihood, listen, whether it's $5 or $50,000, whatever it might be, do you expect that the money we receive would fit this type of spending?
We're not 100% sure at this point. There was some recent guidance issued by the U.S. Treasury that we're still studying, and we may need to do some further questioning on some of the, particularly around the capital project area. It's very clear, obviously, the rescue fund money was intended to mitigate impacts from COVID, but then there are other areas that are identified, like capital projects and projects in low and moderate income communities and things like that that are also referenced in the guide. So the one thing that we want to make sure of when we begin to start committing some funds out of the ARPA funds is that we're pretty sure that it's a covered or a use or eligible use, because they have made it clear that if you spend it on things that are not eligible, or that later on they could reclaim or ask you to pay it back. And so that's kind of a bit of a dilemma, not just for us, but all local governments who are asking these kind of questions right now. Some of the things are real clear. Assistance to people who've been, lost jobs, businesses that have closed, things like that are real clear. But some of the capital spending is a little less clear, and that's, it tends to be what we're hearing. We're hearing from groups that would like money for projects, and all worthy projects. It's just a matter of making sure that it's eligible.
Okay, so, yeah, and that really what I was getting at was we're not prepared to make that type of decision tonight, obviously, and not that you expected that, but we're not, right? So that's going to dramatically influence what it is that we can do. Because if that money's off the table, then obviously the number we're looking at is significantly different when you're talking about $1 million project or 1.3 million. So you're not asking, you're just wanting to know if there's support or interest in it. If I was one commissioner, of course, I would say yes, there's support and interest. It might be on a relatively small number compared to what maybe we were hoping for if the 35 million's in play. But I think we've demonstrated as a court that we want to help. I know Frederica Senior Center, we had a nice construction project, but you're talking 30 grand, not $300,000. So, not something you probably haven't already heard. There is no worse time to build than right now. And if there's any way that you could forego it for a year or so, the costs associated with it, you're running 40-50% more than it traditionally would cost, maybe even more. But that's a decision you'll have to make. The bond bill, have you put a number together that you're seeking?
We sent them the same package that we sent you, and then after my meeting tonight and submitting the community project funding, it is my plan to email them and let them know what we have done to this point, and to ask them, again, asking each of these groups for a third, not.
So a third is kind of what you're thinking.
It's right, 500,000. Yes, to split it between the county, state, and the federal project funding.
So it's a big number, right? But when you put $35 million, maybe it's in play. I get it. Obviously, as you can appreciate, that brings all the other senior centers into play. So that's a cautious tale that we need to make sure we're aware of, that it has to be, something that's orderly. Harrington, City of Harrington, they received money. Are they looking to kick in 10% or something along those lines?
We're hoping, at least right now with the City of Harrington, to, again, depending on these conversations, at least, and I don't know the cost of those, but to definitely waive the impact fees, and then to, again, depending on what we get, go to them. I just know the City of Harrington has their own financial issues that they're dealing with.
I just know it's important that we typically look to have the city share, even if it's in a modest amount. And I think we should continue with that at some point, or in some form. The rest really isn't relevant now, so I don't need to ask those, because I think I know where we are now. But yeah, I certainly would support it as one commissioner.
And you're welcome, anyone is welcome to come see what we're dealing with at the center. We welcome you to come see that. I think seeing it firsthand makes it reality as to where we're coming from. To go back and say, what are we going to do first? I think the first thing we need to do is demolish the part that is the problem for safety and security reasons. So we're definitely looking at moving forward with that first.
Any other commissioners? I have a few questions, Karen, please.
Sure.
I'm the past president of Modern Maturity, and we have a board. Do you have a board on yours too?
Yes.
Okay. So they support what you're doing, and fundraising is, I guess, the number one topic, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Have you talked to Carolyn Fredericks, who's the number one guru for fundraising for this area?
I have not spoken with her about that now,
Okay,
because fundraising right now is on hold, unfortunately for us, with COVID. We've had to cancel some of our larger fundraisers.
Right. Well, due to COVID, I understand, but I would definitely have a discussion, because she has, I think I've been on the board for about 10 years, and she keeps bringing things forth, and we keep giving her the go-ahead because they're unique, and she usually gets most of the money. Sometimes she doesn't get it all, but she gets portions of it. A little bit of something is better than nothing. So I would talk to her about that. And then, have you talked to your legislative delegation about anything other than bond bill?
That is all I have spoken to our delegation about at this time, yes.
Okay. And then, pre-COVID, I guess you guys were renting out for fundraising, your building for functions?
We had started that. I've been at the senior center just 3 years. And I've had to accomplish a lot with what I came into. So, again, that would go back to hiring people to help with that, but we have to get our facility to where it needs to be in order to rent it out.
Because loss of income, from what I understand, the pre-COVID, if you keep good records for that, you'd be able to probably get money for that, for what you've lost in income as one of the criteria. So that would be a plus. And then I'd like to ask Mr. Pettermage, I know in the past we've given the senior homes, when they have functions and stuff, that they needed money. And because we already have a we've already done that. Is there an amount that we could help them out with what we've already given to other senior centers before pre-COVID?
Well, I think you may be referring to like the Community Projects Assistance Fund, and that's the fund that Commissioner Buxton was referencing when we provided assistance not too long ago to Frederica Senior Center with a project there. But it tends to be, we don't have a cap on the amount but it tends to be a smaller amount because the fund itself, this is a county fund that we put in the budget. Every year they put some money in to support non-county owned projects like this. Yeah, certainly there could be a pledge from that, but it wouldn't rise to the level that they're seeking right now, $500,000. That would deplete the entire fund. So,
Right. Well, I was only bringing it up because I remember when the Hope Clinic under the modern maturity they needed furniture when they put the new building. And I believe Commissioner Sweeney made a suggestion about 20. I was doing 20. I think he did 25. I think that's what we got. We gave them for what they needed to do to get set up and get moving. So I was just looking to see if we could do something to get them started, whether it be towards plans, demolition, or whatever, that they'd have the money in the kitty so they can start doing something. That's all I was just trying to say. So, but I'd just like to see them get something so they can get started. And we work with the money, what we can with the COVID and however else we can proceed.
yeah. Yeah, Levy Court does, you control that fund, and it's on a case-by-case basis. If there was a specific immediate need for, say, expenses related to planning or something like that. We've done some projects where we've phased the distribution based on certain milestones, so that's certainly possible for some of the early costs if that's what you wish to do, and then of course the bigger question. And while I have the floor, I'm glad to hear you mention the state and federal agencies that you may be also seeking rescue fund money from, because if it's determined by the state of Delaware and/or a federal agency that it's a qualified expense, then I think we can at least be assured that we won't, be afoul of the program. So I think all three would have to answer that question, or feel comfortable with it. So if one of those higher governments takes the lead, that'd be great. And we could kind of go to the bank on that, so to speak.
Well, I know we're going through our budget. We're approving that, I think, next week. But is it something we can look at and bring back, or to find out if there's any money that we can move around, what's left over from a building, just so that we can get something to them? Like I said, like we've done in the past for the other senior centers.
Commissioner Angel, if I may.
Yes, sir.
And again, we're just having the conversation. I've expressed my desire to support, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. And I don't think that unless you're coming in today to say that we need $20K because the roof is falling down and we have no funds to fix it. And I don't think you're presenting that. What you're saying is we want a large-scale reconstruction, demolition, everything, and we want you to play a third partnership in it. So I would ask you to consider the bond bill, which is not that far off, right? That we wait to see if this money that we're receiving can play the role that they've asked us to have it play before we then jump in front with something that you're really not asking for yet, which is a much smaller amount of funds that may be better served elsewhere, that's restricted. You know what I mean?
Well, basically, Commissioner, I was looking for just to have an idea of looking at it, so that if we could do something, we could do it, and if we found it. That's all I was asking. I wouldn't say give it to them tonight based on what I was saying. I was just saying I'd like to see them try and get something so they can get, but we don't even know if we have it yet, so we go back and look, and we all have that discussion. That's what I was trying to portray.
Yeah, we're in a good spot arguing about a good thing, so it's kind of weird. But I want this to make sense. if you present tonight that you need 20K, that's what you're here for, then we can do it, I guess. But I get back to that's not why they were here. They're here because they want a commitment of a third of a $1.5 million project. So I don't know why we want to manufacture a parting gift, if I may. Unless you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I want it to make sense. That's all. I'm not going back and forth. So I'm done now. But
So to address that question, I mean, yes, we are asking for a third to do this totally. But if there were money to help us get started, I certainly would not turn that money down. And then if you found that, through the COVID monies coming through, that you could help us further, that would certainly be welcomed as well. Because I think we could divide it in phases. It's going to be a little harder. But we're certainly not going to turn down what we can get to get started, if that makes sense.
President Terry Pepper.
I think what all the commissioners haven't said yet is $500,000 is a big number for King County government. We're not Sussex County, and we're certainly not Newcastle County. So we have limited funds, and $500,000 is a big number for us. And of course, you can imagine if we should be able to do that number in any other way other than the COVID money that may or may not get here, or may include you or may not. If we were to do that, then we can expect a lot of other equal entities to come forward and wanting the same amount for their projects. So, when you're talking about we've only got a $30 million budget or so for the county. $500,000 is a lot of money, especially when all the other folks are going to come up those same steps asking for the same amount of money. So I think what we need to do is to find out first what this money that we're promised is going to allow us to do, and hopefully it will allow us to invest in projects like yours in the amounts that you're asking for. And so until we get that information, we're kind of at a stalemate right now, just waiting, just like every other municipality in Kent County and every other county in the state. We're at a standstill right now, just waiting on information. We're starving for information now because the amount of letters that we're getting in of entities that want money is unbelievable. And I've got a desk full of them right now. And so we're going to have to, once we figure out how that money can go out, then we can decide how it goes out. So I think throwing a Band-Aid to you right now isn't going to help you much. And any funds that we have right now for community projects, as Mr. Pettitomage says, that when it's full, there's $500,000 in it, but that's got to be spread out amongst the whole county. So I think the first thing we need to do, Commissioner Angel, is just to figure out what this money is going to be able to be spent for. And then we can go from there and look at it from another direction if it can't be used for capital projects like that.
That's fine with me then. Anybody else?
Mr. Angel, I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Karen, if you already told us this, I apologize, but what's your anticipated timeline? When do you kind of anticipate starting realistically? I mean, if you had the money today, you'd run out and hire someone tomorrow. But I mean, realistically, is it a 3-year project? Is it a 2-year project? A typical project construction, like something like you're talking about, is probably an 18-month construction from start to finish. So,
From the time you get the final
Yeah.
18 months. It'll take us 6 months to get the drawings and, you know, and everything correct and all the permits and city and everything.
Mhm. So it's a little bit hard to tell, but it might be
Yeah,
from the
it's hard
day
to
you're
tell
cutting the
till we know
ribbon.
funding.
The day you're cutting the ribbon might be 3 years away.
We're hoping that the total project would be done within 3 years, if not a little sooner.
Okay.
It's all really pending on the money.
Right.
I mean, as soon as we can get the money, then we can work with the architects and everything to move forward. At this point, we're kind of in this holding pattern until we know what we're going to have to work with.
Okay. The reason I'm asking this, and some of the commissioners will recall, there have been a few other large construction projects where we provided assistance, but it wasn't like a lump sum. It was meted out over the course of the project at certain milestone completion points, you know, so that we were able to manage our finances a little better. And sometimes these projects span a couple budget years. And so that may be one way to think about this, you know, using the figure of 500,000, it may not be, if it works for you, it may not be a total outlay if it could be spread over 18 months of construction or whatever it is. You know, it's a little more manageable, that's all I'm saying.
And I think we could do that. When this presented itself last summer, it was sort of, where do we go from here? In speaking, I know to Senator Wilson, he's the one that sort of said this needs to be, you know, one and done. It's going to be hard to break this into several phases over 5, 6, 7 years. So, I mean, again, we're not opposed to phases. It's just knowing that we're going to have the money to move forward, whether it is 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, just knowing that the money would be available to help us break it down into phases.
Sorry. Completely off task, but out of curiosity. So I looked at some of this where it showed me, am I correct in saying that you're going to expand your footprint? Like
Yes, we would like to expand the footprint.
taking over some homes and taking those down and that type?
No, we're not,
Okay.
this does not include buying any homes next to us.
Yes.
The map that the map that I'm thinking you're referring to just shows the parcels that we already own,
Okay.
and reconfiguring the entrance to the center and with our parking lots the way they are. So no, we're not taking on any new acreage. We're using the acreage that we already have and just making a shift in the layout of the building to, one, make it totally handicap accessible.
Okay. Well, it was just interesting, just the thought that it'd be neat if you would combine, I don't know what the status is of the libraries in Harrington. It would be kind of a neat project if it all kind of came together as one project in the community. But it would require, I thought you had a larger footprint that you were expanding to. So there's a reach, but it is interesting to think of. Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for coming before us, and I'm sure we'll be in contact, and you'll be in contact with us.
Sure. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time and consideration. And again, you're welcome to come see the facility firsthand.
Commissioner Angel,
It's Ms. Sweeney.
on a different topic since Karen's standing here. Karen, Mr. Petitmage, can you read the note on that gavel?
Sure, it says, this gavel was created by Howard Shepard of the custodial staff. The head is made from 200-year-old boxwood recently removed from the courthouse parking lot, and the handle is from solid maple. Presented to Levy Court Commissioners, Christmas 1977. And it's kind of faded, but someone wrote on here, "Love, Barbara," and then it looks like Betty Lou, and I can't make out the third name on here, but Betty Lou may be able to shed some light on this.
There you go. So Karen, can you tell us a little bit of history about where you found that?
So when we were cleaning out after the June ceiling issue, I found that in one of the closets, and I was like, I'm not sure why we have this since it was presented to Levy Court. So I thought no better than to return it to where it should have been given. So I
thank
really
you.
know no history.
We
but
very much
just-
appreciate it, and she says she'll take $500,000 for it.
That is not what I said.
If Bill Paskey was here, he'd know all about that.
I'll bet. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, Karen, the good news is you didn't get a no.
True, and that's, if I didn't come present my story and my issues, no one would know those. So that's what I'm trying to go out to do, is to reach out and say, hey, we need help, to give our seniors what they need.
And you certainly did that, and we appreciate that. And so now it's just a matter of us figuring out how we can help and how much we can help.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any public comments on this one item? Any public comments? Anybody online, Mark? No?
We have, no one's online. Wow, okay, very good.
One more time, any public comments? Seeing none, back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The next item on the committee meetings is Public Safety Committee. Mr. Hall's the chair. Turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief Faulkner, are you going to walk us through these next two items?
I believe the first item may be under one of the commissioners.
Yeah, Mr. Jones is here from the DVFA to help us out on that.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and cover the all hazards. So FEMA requires all the counties in the United States to update their all hazards mitigation plan every 5 years. And their plan had matured. And if you recall, last year we requested funds to hire a consultant, which is always done for this type of work. We had hired Vision Planning and Consulting, and happy to inform that after several layers of review, we did receive notification from the federal government that the plan did pass their muster, so to speak. And while I'm thinking about it, kudos to Brandon Olenek, who spearheaded this along with Vision Planning. It was a busy project that required public hearings and all kinds of meetings. I was kind of busy with COVID and hurricanes and tornadoes, so he did an outstanding job. But anyway, just to summarize this in a nutshell, and I'll just read what the All Hazards Mitigation Plan does. It's the purpose of the mitigation planning is to identify policies and actions that can be implemented over long term to reduce risk and future losses. Mitigation plans form the foundation for a community's long-term strategy to reduce disaster losses and break the cycle of disaster damage, reconstruction, and repeated damage. The planning process creates a framework for risk-based decision-making to reduce damage to lives, property, and economy from future disasters. What this does for us is that it makes us available to receive pre-disaster mitigation funds and disaster mitigation funds. And while we're also we're requesting that the Levy Court adopt this, all of our municipal governments also and townships will be adopting it as well. And that's all part of the public hearing process that we have. So we've used the funds before in Kent County for generators and for water diversion and things of that nature. Some of these coastal communities can use the funds to elevate houses that are subject to, those are the pre-disaster mitigation funding efforts. And then of course the disaster mitigation funds would be after disaster hits. Our department is recommending that the Kent County Levy Court adopt the all hazards plan by resolution. We've included the language, well, Lori did the language for the resolution. And there's also an adoption letter from FEMA for that. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Commissioner Angel?
Thank you. Chief, I'm always fighting with FEMA since the disaster, the nor'easter of 2006 or 7 with Kitsumik. And it doesn't seem like it's gotten any better, because when I go to my conferences and I hear them speak, I usually have to come up and tell them what they didn't do and what's not being done, and that's communication at the lowest level. When I'm the lowest level, I'm the only person in the government that's been there to help somebody. And I think Commissioner Sweeney actually came out to help me during that, when I was able to get together and do some things for the people in that district. I'm wondering, when they say whereas partnerships on the resolution with all levels of government, the private sector and the residents of Delaware can reduce the impact of future. I have a hard time reading that and believing it, since I know it doesn't always work that way.
And I fully understand that. I'm not particularly always 100% happy either with the way the funds are administered. For pre-disaster mitigation, we get a finite level of funds. You're talking about the Kitsumik area and the beach erosion? Is that what you're referring to, sir?
Not just beach erosion. I mean, it's the devastation that we had to handle and get water to them, because their waters had E. coli, and then have, the guard bring in water buffaloes and only to find out that they had E. coli and had to be taken back out. So, I mean, but like I said, I don't mind the word partnerships, but I don't think it's a true partnership when we aren't getting at the lowest level, and we've become the highest persons that they see, and we're trying to work with them. I'm having an issue with that still, and I'm still fighting this, because I'm seeing it when I go to my conferences, like I said, and when I'm done speaking, people are usually standing up applauding what I'm saying, because it's not just me. I guess it's the other counties also are having the same issue. So
for the municipal, all the municipal governments, and oddly or not so oddly enough, we have a hard time getting some of the smaller governments to adopt this by resolution. It's a tough job. But we review any when funds become available for pre-disaster mitigation, all of the folks who have signed off on this can submit a project, and we'll champion the cause for them. We don't, to be honest with you, we don't get that many submittals, and some of them, I think there was the issue of, and it is a cost share. I forget what the balance, what the percentage is for each. It's certainly less for the homeowner or the town, but sometimes when they find, like for example, we looked at to elevate a property one time on stilts. There's apparently only one person or one company in Delaware that does that, and it was so cost prohibitive for the homeowners that they abandoned the effort. But we submit, if somebody comes to us with a project for pre-disaster mitigation funding and the funds are there, we will submit it for them. We'll work with DEMA and we'll do the best we can. Now we're competing for the money. So we fight these battles all the time trying to get money to do things and compete with other governments and things of that nature. But I fully understand what you're saying, though. I do understand the frustration, especially down at the Kitsumik area.
Well, the other thing too that I have to bring up is the plan received a satisfactory rating. I think satisfactory just doesn't set well when you read it in a disaster, because it should be something better than satisfactory, and that's coming from Sarah Wolf, the Chief Branch Floodplain Management, FEMA Region 3, in her letter. So, anyway, Commissioner Sweeney, is there anything that you helped me in that? You were a great help. So, is there anything that you could think of that I'm not saying?
Chief, I'm not sure what this is, how this plays into the mitigation plan.
Well, it's all about money, really, at the end of the day. But it does force all levels of government to review their areas. So, for example, repetitive losses. If a town or an individual suffers insurance losses regularly after, for example, a rainstorm, those are things that we try to avoid or we try to mitigate through the pre-disaster mitigation funding. So actually, we do look at repetitive losses through the insurance agencies and stuff like that. But again, we've never had, I've been doing this for a long time, we've never had any submissions, I don't think, for what's being referenced. There may be, I know the issues with erosion, DENREC kind of champions that cause, I think, and they would be probably very much involved in any efforts for the beach replenishment.
Chief, I can tell you that Levy Court will definitely raise to the occasion for any disaster, as we just did in the past here with Commissioner Hall and Commissioner Sweeney with the tornado. That's with that disaster. So, and knowing you as I have, anytime we've ever called, you respond and you're right there. So I have no problem with us. I just have a problem with the way this is written, I guess.
There's,
if my commissioners want to follow through, I'm not going to say no, but I have to get it on record how I feel and what I say when I go to my conferences and what I've experienced.
And so others are charting your same course in the comments. I've heard it before, and there's a lot of gray area, as well as we all know after the tornado went through that. We mitigated the disaster. We've got but the problem is the damage that was done to properties with trees down all over the place. It cost thousands of dollars to move. That wasn't covered by any funding venue that's out there. And I think the counties did step up to the plate with the dumpsters and renting the equipment and helping to move, the debris that was at least on the roadway. But that whole gray area, all these trees are falling down and busting into houses, and that's the problem with trying to make people whole. And there's where some of the gray area exists between insurance companies and things of that nature. It's not perfect. It's okay, but it's not perfect.
I've said my piece. I just wanted to get it on record. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Move this forward to the business agenda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And the Delaware Volunteer Firefighters Association.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me come here and speak with you this evening. My name is Warren Jones. I'm the Executive Manager of the Delaware Volunteer Firefighters Association. With me this evening is Ken Ryder, who is Second Vice President. Ken, hold up on that, please. Who is Second Vice President of the Delaware Volunteer Firefighters Association from Felton Community Fire Company. I'd like to first start by how we got to where we are right now. In June of 2019, a concurrent resolution was passed by the General Assembly creating a legislative task force to improve the recruitment and retention of volunteer firefighters. The legislative members of the task force were Representative John Mitchell, who is the chair, Senator Bruce Ennis, who is co-chair, Representative Dan Short, Representative Bill Carson, Senator Brian Pettyjohn, and Senator Nicole Poore. The first meeting started in October of 2019. They met about every other month up until March of 2020 when we abruptly stopped because of COVID. When a whole year went by before the task force finally had an opportunity to get back together again. We finally did meet this year. We've had 2 meetings so far. They have finalized their work. They've agreed to a plan. And we're in a process, or they are in a process of writing a final report. The final report has to be approved by the task force and then brought up. The legislation has to be drawn for the parts that come with it. I'd like to take a minute to explain why, what's going on, what the reasons are, what the data is to back up some of that. and just go over the severity of the problem, and then go over the plan itself. And I'd like to throw a little piece of history in here. The volunteer fire service was started before our country was started. It was the first formal, full volunteer fire company was started December 7th, 1736, almost 40 years before the Declaration of Independence, in the city of Philadelphia by Benjamin Franklin. The first volunteer fire company in the state of Delaware started in the city of Wilmington in 1775. The longest continually operating volunteer fire company in the state of Delaware is the Lewis Fire Department, who was started in 1796. And I believe I have this one correct. The oldest one in Kent County is Milford or Carlisle, as they changed their name to, which was started in 1802. Today, according to the National Fire Protection Association, there are 745,000 volunteer firefighters in our country. To try to give you a barometer of the state of Delaware and how things have been going, I used the basic firefighting skills classes taught at the Delaware State Fire School. That's the very first training class that any firefighter goes through. So 10 years ago in 2009, there were 408 firefighters who were trained in basic firefighting skills. 10 years later in 2019, there were 189. So we've dropped by more than half in 10 years. The same thing is occurring in the fire companies, volunteer fire companies, every day. In Newcastle County, fire companies are hiring people to ride their fire apparatus. Just here in Kent County, not too long ago, the Carlisle Fire Company went to their city council and expressed their concern about having enough volunteer firefighters to get the fire trucks out the door. And they would have to start hiring people. The volunteer firefighter devotes a large portion of his or her time and personal sacrifices to the people of Delaware. While technology has changed, while equipment has changed, while those changes have progressed, it still takes boots on the ground and firefighters to wear them to be able to handle the emergency scenes today. And our numbers, our amount of our calls keep growing. While the amount of firefighters keep declining, the amount of our calls keep growing. If the volunteer fire service was replaced by a fully paid fire department fire service in the state, according to the auditor in her 2020 report, it would cost $244 million to replace it with a fully paid department. I tried to put that part there to Kent County. So I took the population of the state of Delaware and the population of Kent County, and I came up with, in order for Kent County to convert over to a fully paid fire department, and again, this is based on population, would be about $49 million per year. And that's approximately it. So what do we lose if we lose volunteer fire companies? First of all, we lose that $49 million a year here and $244 million statewide. But we lose two other things that I consider to be just as important. We lose our people pool. There are 1,534 EMTs in the state of Delaware. Almost all of those 1,534 EMTs who ride these ambulances in the state of Delaware came out of that volunteer fire service. Not 100%, but the overwhelming majority came from the volunteer fire service. There are, and I'm doing this without my glasses because my glasses steam up with this mask on, so bear with me for a second. There are 325 paramedics serving in the Delaware EMS system. I will put them on. Most, not all, but a good majority of them came out of the volunteer fire service. The 3 paramedic supervisors in each county all started their careers in the volunteer fire service. The director of the Sussex County EMS is a president of the Frankfort Volunteer Fire Company. The state fire marshals and his staff, the Delaware State Fire School and his staff, all came out of the volunteer fire service and still are members of the volunteer fire service. The 911 communications center are staffed mostly by volunteer firefighters. So when we, and you look at the city of Wilmington, which is the only career department in the state, most of their members came from the volunteer fire service as well. And then this could go on and on. You talk about police officers and municipal police and state troopers. A lot of them came from the same place. So altogether, there are probably several thousand career jobs in public safety directly related to this volunteer system. So if we lose the system, we lose the people pool. We lose where we draw our EMTs from. We lose where we draw some of our police officers from, our 911 dispatchers from. Our whole public safety corps could be in jeopardy if we lose that pool of people. And lastly, volunteers and firefighters and EMTs are part of their community. I mentioned that Kenny's fire company is a Felton Community Fire Company because the fire departments have always been a part of their community. Sure, times have changed and people have moved, but that community connection is there. If we lose that, if we have to hire people, they don't know that Mrs. Smith is the clerk at the local hardware store. They lose that connection with Mrs. Smith. They're coming in from some other community to work a paid job, and they don't get that grasp of the community. Our auxiliaries have chicken dinners or fairs and things like that where the community comes to the firehouse. Well, that's all gone. So we lose that community kick. That community connection becomes a community disconnect. So there's a lot more than just money that we're talking about here. There's a lot more that the volunteer fire service comes out of and puts together. I've been in the fire service for 50 years, and I travel all up and down the state in my job as executive manager of the DVFA. So I get to meet a lot of people. I spent Sunday at a funeral in Selbyville. I spent most of last week working on that funeral to prepare for it. Volunteer firefighters are definitely unique individuals. They're unparalleled brother-sister relationship. They make a difference in people's lives every day. They do make that difference. There's a certain kindred spirit that is embedded in them and thrives in the men and women who are volunteer firefighters. That spirit encompasses the tradition, pride, dedication, and service. That's another spirit that we don't want to lose. Kenny hand you the plan. I'd like to go over the parts of the plan with you. When I get done, we certainly can answer any questions on there. But I want to tell you the plan's in 10 parts. 10 parts. It's just like bricks on a wall. With one brick, you're not going to build that wall. It's going to take all 10 parts. This is a very thought out, thorough plan that puts this whole thing together. The first part of the plan is a recruitment retention training class. And while all these parts don't involve Kent County, or you in particular while I'm here, I want you to know what the whole plan is. So the first part is the Delaware State Fire School will develop a recruitment retention training class. The class will be presented to all fire companies, all administrators, all community, all membership committees, all recruiters. You know, while recruiting is deemed by experts to be a local issue, there are strategies and presentations and best practices that are universal across the fire service, no matter where you go. So we can teach those parts. We can include recruitment, retention, and monitoring, and orientation, and mentoring, all those little parts that go with it. And we can deliver that plan to the fire companies and their recruiters to show them how it works. Part 2 of the plan is a AmeriCorps program. I don't know how many of you have heard of the AmeriCorps program. It's been around for a long while. The part two is to establish a AmeriCorps program through the Department of Health and Social Services Volunteerism Office. There are presently about 200 AmeriCorps members in the state of Delaware who are operated through the Office of Volunteerism. They would be assigned to the companies based on call volume and based on geographic consideration. Each county government would cover a 24% match of the stipend for the AmeriCorps members. These members would be I already went to the point that we don't have enough volunteer firefighters. We don't have enough people to recruit volunteer firefighters. So we've got to find a place to get people involved that can do the recruiting for us, that can go to the HOAs and the community meetings and the schools. And the plan involves the schools as we go along there too. And that's where these folks come in. We can use these folks to do the recruiting for us, to get our name out there, to be able to go into the community and recruit people as best they can. Third part of the plan is for the state of Delaware to add an extra training administrator, to hire another person to work out of the Delaware State Fire School that would manage the AmeriCorps people. The Department of Health and Social Services, who runs a volunteerism office, cannot manage the program. There has to be a manager. And what better place to have a manager than at the fire school where all the training is done, where all the fire type of issues come about. So that's part of the plan. A while ago, they tried to run this in Newcastle County. And the biggest problem they had when they ran it in Newcastle County back in 2000, 2001 was the management of it. There was no person assigned to specifically manage the program. Without a manager, programs don't succeed. So that's why that training administrator has been built into this. Number three is called GEMS, a GEMS program. It was started in Sussex County by a group of volunteer firefighters in the Indian River School District. The program focuses on kids from 10 to 15 years of age. It involves a once-a-year assembly program and an after-school program. The AmeriCorps members could run this GEMS. We want to adopt this GEMS program throughout the whole state, throughout all the schools in the state, and targeting that 10 to 15-year-old. If we can target them and get them involved while they're young, then we've got a chance to bring them along to some public safety field. So that's part of what the AmeriCorps members would do under the direction of their manager. The Sussex County GEMS program was working good until COVID-19 came about, and then they had to stop it because the schools were shut down and they couldn't get moving in there. In addition, they could paint that public safety career seed, hopefully, in the minds of the youth. Number 5 is the internet website and marketing. The Delaware Volunteer Firefighters Association already has a recruitment website. We would continue to operate the website and pay for the website and monitor and adopt it. It's firefighter.delaware.gov. If you want to go on there and look at it, it's pretty cool. We really need to update it a little bit though, but it's still a very viable website right now. So the fire school, and when any hits come from that website, it would automatically go to the fire school manager and out to the chairman of the DVFA recruitment chair. Number 6 is the city of Wilmington, which has the only career fire department in the state, so they don't have any volunteer firefighters. But yet they have a lot of youth. They have a lot of young people in Wilmington who may be looking for something to do with their lives, something to come around. So if we get the Wilmington legislators, the Wilmington Fire Department on board, maybe we can get those children or those young people involved in the volunteer fire companies that surround the city of Wilmington. We do have history of that. The Ellesmere Volunteer Fire Company started that about 4 or 5 years ago, and they've been successful. They brought youth in from Wilmington who today have matured, have got the public safety bug. Some of them moved into police departments. Some of them are career firefighters in the city of Wilmington. Some of them went to the EMS field. Number 7 is vocational education. We have Delaware vocational high schools with CTE programs. I don't know how you're familiar with them, but they're programs which we like to get the vocational schools involved with firefighting and EMT and EMR classes. The St. George's Vocational School now has its own EMT program. So we're looking to expand that to the other vocational schools throughout the district, or throughout the state, excuse me. According to Association of Supervisors and Curriculum Development, 93% of high school students in CTE programs graduate on time. The national average is 84%. So the CTE programs work. We want to try to get fire and EMS involved in them CTE programs so we can generate more young people graduating from high school. Number 9 is college credits. Have classes taught at the Delaware State Fire School to qualify for college credits. The Delaware State Fire School is a Pro Board certified academy as well as a national registered EMT educational facility. So they already have a pass-fail programs that could easily be college credits. And we're trying to build this up for the retention part of what we're doing here. Tuition reimbursement for graduate and undergraduate studies at a Delaware State University, Delaware University, or college like Del Tech or Del State or University of Delaware. Tuition reimbursement is a valuable tool. The law enforcement community has been using it for years. So we want to adopt a program through the General Assembly to do the same thing for the fire service, to offer tuition reimbursement for firefighters who meet the qualifications very similar to the law enforcement program. And the last thing we have on the list, number 10, is to increase the Delaware State income tax credit to $1,000 for every volunteer firefighter who meets the qualifications. Presently, that it's $500. So there's a big uncompensated personal cost to volunteer firefighters. Not only just the monetary loss that they have through fuel for their cars, depreciation on their vehicles, ruined clothing, but there's a physical and psychological and emotional loss that volunteer firefighters go through. Whether it's missing the Sunday dinner or the soccer game or the recital, which is part of the emotional family loss, or whether it's the traumatic things we see, whether it's the deaths or whether it's the injuries that we see, also weighs heavily on the volunteer firefighters. The strains, cuts, and bruises are part of the physical end of what we're involved with, what we do. When I put this together, the cost would be, a cost for Kent County for the AmeriCorps program would depend on how many AmeriCorps members you might be interested in. And let me back up by saying this is not a time-sensitive thing, by the way. First of all this plan has to be approved. Then the legislation has to be drawn up to adopt it and put in place. So you know how the General Assembly works. So by the end of June, we're hoping to have that passed. By the time the governor signs it, becomes law, we're looking at probably your next budget cycle by the time all this is done. I took the high end. I took the high end of the AmeriCorps numbers, and I figured 6 in Kent County. That number is about $43,000. That's the high end. It could be less than that. It all depends on when the program is instituted and when what changes the federal government makes to the AmeriCorps program between now and then. I can't give you an exact a time frame on that or an exact price until we get a little closer to finalizing all this. But I wanted to come and talk to you. I've already spoken to Kent County, or excuse me, Newcastle County, Sussex County, and not that I was holding you to last, but I finally ran into Terry and got an arrangement to come here and see you. I can't overemphasize that we've got to do something. If we don't, something tragic may happen one of these days. There isn't a volunteer fire company in the state of Delaware that doesn't have an issue with people. You saw by the numbers from the training class, well, how it's dropped in half in 10 years. We're hoping that we can generate enough interest. That's why our program not only targets young children, younger kids to get them involved in the beginning, but it also targets older people. You know, we don't want to miss that 40-year-old person whose kids are grown and back in school or out to college who looking for something to do. If we can get 15, 20 years out of them, they're a great target too. So it's not just the children we're looking for. We want to get them involved, hopefully when they're young, and to get that thrill thing built into them. But we want to look across the board. You know, we just don't do firefighting. A lot of our companies need administrative people too. We're having a difficult time with administrative people because the older treasurers and secretaries and so on are passing on or you know, so we have a lot of slow issues there. But I'm a passionate person, as you can tell, and I truly would like to see this remain in place as long as possible. I know you're going to have some questions, so here I am.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Go ahead.
Mr. Jones, I share your passion for the fire service because my husband's been a 54-year member of Smyrna and just recently joined Clayton. And I can tell you from time to time during the day, Smyrna has difficulty getting 5 people to get a truck out, which is what they have to have. And pretty much the runs during the day are run jointly between Smyrna and Clayton. And if Clayton town workers couldn't get off and to run those trucks, it would be a very, very different outcome with the fires in the Smyrna Clayton area. And they've had some big fires of late. My concern, obviously, is that the school districts don't really promote volunteerism like they did when I went to Smyrna School. And I think it starts at the schools and it starts at the homes, where if mom and dad or whoever you're living with is volunteering, it sets a good example for those kids to follow. I don't know that that's happening in today. The other thing I can tell you, living in District 1, when I was campaigning, I found out there are many people that live in the Wicksfield and in the Southern View communities that belong to the fire service, but they don't belong to the Delaware Fire Service. They live in Delaware and they go over to Baltimore County, Prince George's County, et cetera. And there's a real good reason why they do that. They work several hours and they're off several days. But where Smyrna, I think, or not Smyrna, but the state of Delaware is giving between $400 and $500 a year tax credit, the state of Maryland is doing anywhere between $4,000 to $4,500 per year tax credit, which makes a big difference. And yes, Maryland is a lot bigger than Delaware, but I think whether it's at the state level or at the county level, we really have to take this matter seriously. Or one fine day when you dial 911, there's not going to be enough people to man those trucks, which I think by insurance, you have to have a certain number of people in a truck before the truck pulls out. They're not going to be able to answer that alarm at a home, at a business, or an accident on 13, because as we all know, 13 and 1 is notorious for accidents, especially in Smyrna at exit 114 and 119. It's every weekend during the night, it doesn't matter. We have that, but it's a real problem that we all have to face here because it affects every one of us.
Yes, you are absolutely correct. And thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Angel?
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. I agree with Ms. Maston because I know the fire company here in Little Creek, they're having a heck of a time and they're advertising all the time for somebody to step up to the plate. And I've had discussions with them too about not just tax credits, but they have to have training, they have to have schooling, and their service over a time frame. If they were given an incentive of, I don't know what it would be, the criteria would have to be set up that would, by a certain time, that you get a credit for your home, your family, and then by a certain age, if you've done your fire service, I would say 40, 50 years, you don't have any more taxes on your home because of the service you provided to your county and your state. It's something similar to what I was trying to propose for the veterans that, when they're disabled, right now it's 100%, but you have veterans at 10, 20, 30, 40, they should get percentage off too, is the way I feel, for their service to their country. So this is just a little bit different, but at the same time, unless you get those incentives in place and young people and get them to where technology now seems to be where they're headed, you're going to lose them, but we got to find a way to get them. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's partly why we did the tuition reimbursement and the educational part of the retention part, and also the $1,000 tax credit. By the way, in Maryland it is like $4,300, but that's off the top. That's $4,300 off of your top income. Delaware is off the bottom. So actually, Delaware's ends up being a lot better than Maryland.
Any other questions? Mr. Pepper?
So if I'm, my quick calculations without the use of my phone or calculator, if you went on the high side at 6 at 43,000, is that 43,000 per person?
No, that's
That's for the entire program?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so you'd want, probably from Kent County, then you're looking at somewhere around $10,000 per
Pardon?
year? 10,000 per year, is that what you're looking at? Or?
It's about 7,000 per person.
Oh, 7,000 per person,
Yeah,
so
and like 72. I don't know the exact. Or on my
so
calculator.
about 43,000, okay. Okay. Gotcha, okay. So right now, you're looking for us to, you're not looking for anything other than support.
Yep, yes.
Right now, you're not looking for anything from us other than we support the idea.
Yes,
And we'll
until
sign on to it.
But when I get the final numbers, when it gets closer to when this is all going to come about, I wanted to get, like I said, the final report has to be approved by the entire task force. But I wanted to get out and get a feel for the three counties. We want to we want you to feel like you're a part of this. It's not just what the state does. We want to make each county feel like they're contributing and being a part of it. So that's why I when I talked to you, Mr. President, that's what I wanted to do. That's why I wanted to come here and talk to everybody. So yeah, as I get closer to that, when's your budget time?
Done.
We're finishing up the end of this month.
Okay.
Passing the end of this month.
Budget starts when? July 1. Okay. All right.
So Warren, given that, we don't have anything in the 2022 budget that we're getting ready to approve for this. So what's your timeline for this? That you really think you would come back to us and say, okay, everything's approved, we want to move forward with the AmeriCorps for Kent County?
I'm meeting with the AmeriCorps folks sometime in the next couple of weeks. So I can get some projections about what the federal government's going to do with the AmeriCorps program. Because the federal government just put some more money in the AmeriCorps program. So I can get a better feel then. And I can get back to you, Mr. President, on that.
So do you guys have a budget year that you would start this program? Like July 1st?
Well, it won't even be signed into law by July 1st.
Okay, great.
The General Assembly, of course, works till June 30th. And then the governor has to sign the bill, has to have an effective date. I don't know what that effective date's gonna be yet. It may be January 1st. You know, I have to wait till those things materialize till I know exactly where we are and what's going on. But I from your conversation, things like the majority of you are in favor of the concept. It's just a matter of coming up with the end number. And again, like I said, you can choose the amount of people you want. You know, if you wanted more than 6, you could do more than 6. If you wanted less than 6, you could do less than 6. You know, I just picked 6 because there's 18 volunteer fire hydrants in Kent County, and I figure a person could cover 3 of them. But they'll work, all 6 of them will work together as a team because they'll go to different events together. You know, they'll be promoting together as a team. But I wanted the 6 of them to be related to a fire company or to a group of fire companies, so they can learn about the Kent County Fire Service and the Kent County Fire Companies. So the more background and more information they can develop by being in the firehouse and meeting the people and seeing how they operate, the better job they're going to be as far as recruiting people. And the more knowledge they have, the better they will be.
So just one more question, Warren. So how's volunteer companies accepted this?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How have the volunteer companies accepted this?
They have not actually seen the whole plan yet. And I couldn't send it out to them until the task force approves it. You know, I'm pretty sure, I mean, this was cast in stone. They approved the concept. When the final report's done, I doubt very much whether anything will change. If anything changes, it may be that tuition reimbursement. There may be some restrictions or hours of commitment built into that part. But as far as the first 8 parts, they're fixed. The last 2, and that all depends on whether the General Assembly wants to increase it to $1,000 or not. So, but it was a unanimous decision from the task force to go with this plan. So that's not going to change unless some catastrophe happens in Legislative Hall. And this year, the way the DFAC report was, I don't think there's going to be a catastrophe in Legislative Hall.
Mr. Pettit-Tomasz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Jones, for being with us today, and thanks for presenting the plan and tackling this issue. I was wondering, have you presented this to the other counties yet? And has anyone, kind of signed up, so to speak, already, or is this just are we one of the first hearing this, or?
I've spoken to the president of Sussex County Council, and I've spoken to the Newcastle County Executive. Okay. Both of them are on board. Okay. They haven't presented to the council yet, but the executive told me Newcastle County already has an AmeriCorps program. So they're familiar with it. They use AmeriCorps members already. Sussex County does not, but President good old Mike Vincent there was on board with it.
Okay. And the balance of the funding, the 76%, is federal money? Is that what funds the AmeriCorps, or is it the state, or where's that money come from?
Yes, it comes from the federal government. So like all federal grants, there's always a match.
Right. Okay.
Gotcha. No matter what federal grant you has, there's always a match tied in with. Mm-hmm. And the match tied in with the AmeriCorps program is 24%. So the federal government pays the rest of the program.
And I think my last question is, would the AmeriCorps volunteers likely be local like Delaware residents, for example, or is it a pool that they just bring from wherever they draw them from?
I don't
sure.
know if I have an answer for that.
Okay, I'm just curious, Harley.
Yeah, back in 1999 and 2000, when we ran the program in Newcastle County, most of them were local. Now, I don't know where it is now. You know, that was 20 years ago.
Okay.
But I don't have an answer for that right now.
Well, thank you very much again for being with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right.
May I ask one question, Mr. Jones?
He's not.
I'm trying to be last. And it helps, right? Because some of the questions were answered. One of them that you answered, I just didn't catch it. $244 million if we did away with all the volunteer services and had, I guess we'll call it state fire service. Is that correct?
Yes, it would cost $244 million to replace the volunteer service with a career service. And the auditor, for years, the auditor has done this annual report. And the new auditor did the one for 2020, but the numbers are based on the cost to operate the City of Wilmington Fire Department.
How about Kent County again? What was that number? Did you share that with us? I know you said that you were going to, and then I...
49 million.
49 million for Kent County. You're asking us if we were to decide tonight, which we're not, roughly 50 grand per year to help fund this program. Is that
Probably,
in fairness? Okay.
Yeah.
What the other county would say, and the timeline is we're waiting on the state. There are some interesting conversations that you could have with state leaders about education and college credits and those things. There's a seed program that's out there that's associated with associate degrees.
We spent a lot of time, I don't want to prolong this, by the way, but we spent a lot of time looking at other states, and we brought people in from closer states to testify about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and we kind of like cherry-picked what the good things they were doing and put it together, and that's how we finally, and some of our own intuition and our own studies ourselves as far as the state of Delaware is concerned, and that's how we finally ended up putting the plan together.
Yeah, really what I was offering or stating was that that the legislators, through the influence of the community and organizations like yourself, have to recognize that we're spending a significant amount of money funding a program designed around associate's degree with a 20% success rate. And that while I support that initiative, we can do better. And the way you do better is that you expand the program so that some of those folks that are flooding that system that have no desire really to go to college, it's just they've left high school and what are they doing next? Well, this is free, let's try it. If the state would do a better job of expanding what is considered a scholarship to include skills like an EMT or fire service that doesn't necessarily require an associate's degree. If they would expand that program, there's your funding. There's a bill out there right now in front of the General Assembly, SB 12. There's a couple more that are out there that are looking to expand the amount of credits or semesters available to the SEED program. It's a nice idea. It's a wonderful cause. It's not as effective as it should be. We need to stop ignoring that, and folks like you need to be organized and say that we need to expand the program. It's not enough to say that you're offering free college to anybody with a C- average if you're going to ignore the fact that 80% of them send the money down a hole that never comes back. It's my rant. I'm attacking it over the next couple of weeks. I could use your help. So, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Make sure I don't miss anybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any public comments or questions on the last two items? Anyone online or on the phone? Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Public Works Committee, Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Goat will come forward for this one item.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight I'm here about the commercial trash service contract, change order number 5 for Republic Services. 4 change orders have been done to date, and 3 of them had to do with extensions of the contract. This is again before you as an extension of the contract. We are considering a change order to extend it until June 30, 2022 with a price increase of 2%. And the estimated value of the contract is $53,451.04. And that includes an estimate of a roll-off tonnage of $2,000 a month. Sir, that completes my report.
Any questions? All right, this is pretty cut and dry. This will be a 2% increase, and it'll last us until June 30th, 2022. Any questions? Comments? All in favor of it being a business item tonight? 7 up. Thank you. Any comments from anybody on the air or elsewhere? No. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll reconvene the business meeting. The first item has been crossed off. Move down to the potential action items from committee meetings. Mr. Hall has the first one, Resolution 3877.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Resolution 3877, adopting the Kent County All Hazard Mitigation Plan. Would you like me to read that into the record?
Resolution 3877, resolution adopting the Kent County All Hazard Mitigation Plan, whereas the state of Delaware, like all other states, is vulnerable to hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding, and other natural and technological disasters, including terrorism and weapons of mass destruction that in the past have or could cause extensive loss of life and property and severe disruption to essential human services. And whereas the Stafford Act was recently amended by the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, Section 322, EMA 2K PL, Section 106 through 390, which provides new and revitalized approaches to mitigation planning and emphasizes the need for state, local, and tribal entities to closely coordinate mitigation planning and implementation efforts. And whereas 2/3 of the population lives in a single county, and whereas during warmer months, tourists who visit the state's 90 miles of coastline, often coming from other states, may fully understand the potential for hazards associated with coastal weather-related disruptive events. And whereas in the past 10 years, disasters have caused the loss of lives, personal injuries, and more than $49 million in today's dollars in property damage. And whereas billions of dollars worth of residential, commercial, and coastal property in Delaware are at risk from hurricanes and weather-related damages. And whereas partnerships with all levels of government, the private sector, and the residents of Delaware can reduce the impact of future events through hazard mitigation planning. And whereas compliance with the new mitigation plan requirements will position the state of Delaware to receive pre- and post-disaster mitigation funding Now therefore be it resolved that Kent County does hereby adopt the Kent County All Hazard Mitigation Plan. Be it further resolved that this resolution is incorporated into the official minutes of the Tuesday, April 20th, 2021 meeting of the Kent County Levy Court.
So just to repeat, I move to approve Resolution 3877, adopting the Kent County All Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Hall, second by Commissioner Sweeney to approve Resolution 3877. Is there any questions? If not, can we have roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Angel?
Yes, with my reservations I stated before.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Resolution 3877 has been approved. Next item, Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Mr. President. My move to approve change order number 5 to the Commercial Trash Collection Services contract with the BFI Waste Services, LLC, DBA Republic Services of Del Mar in the estimated amount of $53,451.04 with a unit price increase of 2% and a 1-year contract extension until June 30, 2022. Funds for services are budgeted in the annual budgets of the General Fund and Sewer Fund, and moved to authorize the President of Levy Court to sign change order number 5.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Howell, second by Commissioner Hall to approve. Any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Taka, can we have roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. Motion has been approved. Okay, that's the end of the potential action items from committee meetings. We'll move on to informational items. Anybody have any informational items? Anybody have any, or is there any public comments? Any public comments? Seeing no public comments. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner comments. Commissioner Angel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since we are having a combined meeting tonight, I'd like to have my comments saying them all over again from the committee meeting on the migration, hazardous migration. I'd like to have the minutes of what I said and that added to the minutes of our business meeting for record. That's the only way I think it'll get recorded, and people will see it then.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Anything? Thank you. Need a motion to adjourn.
We need to do an executive session for reading in the record. Do we need an executive session to read in the record for next week?
We've already done that.
No.
Did last week.
Just want to make sure.
Unless you can do it from memory from right now. Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sweeney, second by Commissioner Hall to adjourn. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Angel?
Yes.
Mr. Buxton?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maston?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Pepper?
Yes.
Mr. President, roll call reveals 7 yeas.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
You guys gotta run.
Thank you. Does it need to be signed? Put that on the table.